worked in as a government contracting individual using R, Hadoop, and different visualizations on big data sets. I also worked for a company building out a data stack, and in particular, obviously, we're presented with so many of these tools to build a data stack, and so I was very lucky to be able to do a bunch of different proof of concepts on every single ETL different capability that you have, and so that also shaped a lot of my perspective on how I kind of approach things as well. And then finally, my current role is, my title is a data and analytics strategist, and I work for a digital marketing company. That company is called Spinutech, and we are located in Des Moines, Iowa. And so at this company is definitely the biggest data team that I've ever worked on, which is super cool. I've worked traditionally either independently or on a team of maybe one or two. And so I've kind of used all of that different kind of background in this current role to sort of build this data team, this analytics team that we're trying to build, learn all those different data processes, and even more and more visibility into the different tools and capabilities of these more advanced analytics capabilities.
Cool. How's the weather over there?
For December in Iowa, it's pretty amazing. I've been biking like 20 miles a day, actually, so it's been pretty awesome. I want to take advantage of it.
For you guys, like, warm is what, like 30 or?
In the winter, that is absolutely warm. -3 would be our, cold spell.
Yeah, I used to live in, like, as I mentioned before to you, my school. I went to Clark College in Dubuque, Iowa. So it's pretty close to Des Moines, So I know how hard a winter can be over there, but it's really beautiful as well. Anna, thanks for that intro. Like, you just mentioned actually that you started like in theoretical stuff, and when I think on math and statistics, I'm wondering how are you introduced into AI or ML, and like, did that came to you naturally, or was it more a, hey, now that you know statistics and math, you would be great doing this? And was that something like that you had to spend your knowledge on, or again, did it came natural, and was it something that you were going deep into when you were at school?
Yeah, that's a great question. As I kind of mentioned, our program overall was pretty theoretical, but as a part of our program, of course, you always have access to maybe electives, and particularly computer science was necessary for all of our program to be able to learn. And so one of those options that I was able to take was specifically a machine learning class. I'll be honest, I don't remember exactly what that class was called, but we used a program called Weka, and it's specifically for machine learning. And as much as possible, I tried to take these electives, and it became more and more fascinating as I started to learn all these different tools and how much data really we do have access to be able to start asking ourselves these questions. And so in particular, in that class, I was introduced to the Twitter API. And that Twitter API, I was able to use using R, which was my traditional language for programming in the statistics world, is R. And therefore, there was a connection to the Twitter API where you could extract a lot of different tweets and do some natural language processing into that. And so we did a ton of different exercises with that data set, training it to be able to learn more about the sentiment, and also some classification exercises on what these maybe two different populations, how they talk about things on Twitter. And again, that introduction just kind of fascinated me. And ever since that experience, I kind of took anything that I was able to get my hands on to be able to get more of that type of information. Since then, I've kind of looked into the Twitch API. The Google Analytics has an API, not only for R, but for anybody that programs in Python or anything either. Those APIs are accessible. And from there, just asking myself questions, how can we build some of these machine learning models that we learned as a tool set, and being able to apply them. What I particularly appreciate about my background in the math and stats, because I totally agree with you, math and stats, there's a lot of assumptions and some things that you have to check. So normality, checking residuals, there's a lot of different steps before you maybe do some of these more classical models. And the cool thing about these machine learning classes that I was taking is when some of those assumptions don't necessarily exist. For example, in a real life, there's a lot of volatility in marketing data. There's a lot of volatility in these different really big data sets. Some of these machine learning models could take that into account. And so I appreciated being able to use that tool set, that foundation from some of these statistical assumptions, and putting those situations in the right type of model that we learned in some of these machine learning models. So it definitely took some learning, especially with the tool sets, of course. Some of these APIs I wasn't familiar with. I'm not traditionally a programmer by any means, but so that did take some time. But again, kind of using that foundation, those things that I was able to convert into some of these machine learning interpretations as well. Because the last kind of note on that is being able to interpret some of these models is obviously really important to be able to communicate either to another individual, a client, whoever you're trying to answer these questions for, and putting all of that together was kind of how my experience got through there.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting because we're gonna go into the stack in a little bit, but in terms of R, is that like I don't know, like a specific class that you take on R in school, or was it more, hey, I want to apply this, I just want to jump into R and just play around with it? Like, I just want to understand if in school, in your major or in your master's, what if R was part of the curriculum and it was like, okay, you guys now have to learn how to code as well.
Yeah. R specifically was integrated into every single
Okay.
one of our classes.
Okay.
So R was definitely part of my everyday life. The other things, maybe some of the more specifically, how do you get a pull? How do you use a get and a pull request?
Mm-hmm.
If we had to go in any more detail, that's where that would come out. But yeah, to your point, R was definitely a part of every single one of our classes, and learning the different packages available to us was if we needed to kind of go outside of our classroom, that's where that would come into play.
Cool. Okay. Well, shifting gears a little bit, I know you guys are building the analytics team at Spinutech. What does that team look like, and how do you guys approach the problem? And actually, what problems are you guys trying to solve, or what are you guys exploring right now?
Yeah, our entire team is under the digital performance department at our company, and in that digital performance section, we have a total of 8 individuals. Those 8 individuals are kind of broken out into specialties, and on the analytics specialty, there are 5 of us. And so, as a quick note before I kind of go into the structure of everything, our entire agency is super data driven. So every single department, not only the digital performance department, but all of our other different strategy elements, everybody uses data to make decisions and present those decisions to our clients. What our specific team on the analytics side is trying to do is take it one step further. So we're trying to build on those possibilities that is already kind of happening in normal discourse, but making the data as absolutely useful to our clients as possible, and to show them the value of some of these more sophisticated analytics. So as I kind of mentioned before, all of our clients are definitely not really a one size fits all. We work specifically with our clients to kind of work or develop that partnership, and to try to ask the right questions, get the right questions out of them, to be able to put into these more sophisticated machine learning models. And at that point, as we take some of these small steps to introduce that value, then we can show them the value and continue to grow our team and grow our skill sets.
How, Anna? How, because this really interests me, because my BA was in advertising and PR. Then I actually founded an advertising agency, then a web development company, and then it's when I did my MBA and then my master's in software engineering, which I'm pursuing right now. So I come from that world, right? So the question I have is the team isolated from the rest of the agency, trying like to push stuff because this is new and the clients are starting to ask about it, or is the team embedded with the like the performance team, and you are actually kind of like giving clients all of these metrics no matter what? Like can you go a little bit like deeper on what's this, because I haven't been in that industry for a while now, and I'm not sure how much data and ML or AI is embedded really in the operation, or is that's what actually you're trying to do right now?
Yeah, your last comment there is what I would definitely speak to a little bit more. It is
Yeah.
more on what we're trying to do. Our entire company is very collaborative, and so again, from the analytics side, trying to learn more about the different strategies. Of course, we definitely will not be the experts on maybe to your from your experience, like the paid social side, the paid media side. They're going to be the experts in their specific platforms and how we kind of integrate and collaborate with them to show them the possibilities. I think one thing as far as our conversations go within our company is that we know that data is this next step. It's not going away, and we're just scratching the surface. But one thing that can be kind of hard to understand is really what are the possibilities.
Yep.
And so we try to introduce again in kind of small steps, like as we listen and we hear everybody talk about kind of the way that they approach data, and okay, what can we do to take it to the next level? What else how much more insight can we get out of this situation? How much more value add can we get by kind of applying some of these different techniques? And so yeah, again, kind of on your last point there, we're really trying to get in there, understanding that it will take, some growing, some learning, and some additional skill sets as well.
Yeah, what's interesting there is like right now your agency, for example, has the capabilities, but I remember that one of the challenges back in my days was clients kind of like being open to share their data with an agency, right? It was like, okay, but you guys are the agency, like the analytics, we do it somewhere else. So the question is, I bet that problem should be like kind of fading away right now, because it's obvious that with a person like you, the agency has better capabilities. But do you kind of like perceive that nowadays, or is that problem again fading away?
I would definitely say there's for sure some discussions between, yeah, like sharing data, I think is
Yeah.
kind of what you're getting at as well. And those conversations will definitely continue to happen between our department and the client, and
Right.
to just again develop kind of that partnership and
Correct.
uh, explaining maybe what that value add, if we were able to get access to data or be able to use what we would be able to get out of it, is definitely those conversations that are having. I definitely would say that the problem isn't necessarily going away, but there are different types of conversations happening around what is accessible, how do we use it, what is the outcome if that happens.
Yeah, and I think an agency is kind of like the trusted advisor for the client, so it's like a natural step. But for some reason back in my days, again, it was kind of like a barrier. But anyways.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, again, I don't think the problem's necessarily going away, but as all problems, the problem has maybe developed a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I have a couple more questions, but I just wanted to open it up for the people that is joining us in the channel. Again, you can just post your questions in the AMA discussion, and I can bring them to Anna here. So feel free to post any questions you guys might have. Again, this is more a conversation more than just me trying to have an interview with Anna. So feel free to do that. Okay. In the meantime, Anna, just jumping into the next question. Um, what are some of the most interesting things in terms of AI for marketing, for example? Is there any specific use cases, successes that you guys are having? Can you like take us through how that looks like at this point?
Yeah, the two that most come to mind that we've either seen a potential need for, or that we've already done some research on are natural language processing. The two that I'm going to mention are pretty broad, but I'll kind of go into
Hmm.
specifics. But natural language processing is definitely something that I can see is going to be go towards the future and definitely is super interesting for marketing. And some of those specific elements are talking about sentiment from social media, of
Hmm.
course, in the agency world. In any sort of marketing, you kind of want to be able to feel how your customers are seeing and understanding your ads or just your page in general. And so being able to understand if that's positive, if it's negative, if it's joyful, anger, like how are these clients and consumers feeling about your social media? And not only that, but also on a trending basis to be able to kind of make some decisions. But similar on the natural language processing, another couple of use cases that I could see being super beneficial in the marketing world is driving like content creation. And so, like, what type of content drives different types of either emotions or more emotions. So, like, what type of content is driving more comments, more engagement. Engagement is a huge metric in any sort of marketing, and how to do that on a specific cadence is very valuable to organizations to be able to efficiently optimize the way that they're driving their organization.
Great.
And then lastly, oh yeah, go
No,
ahead.
no, no. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, and then in general, just kind of like the user experience, language can tell a lot about
Hmm.
that, and being able to objectively measure what a consumer experience is something that I know that is going to just again continue in the future for AI and machine learning.
Cool. So at this point, it's more deep learning, NLP stuff, more than machine learning, right?
In that example, yes,
Okay.
definitely. I would say more on the machine learning side. Another example in the marketing world is again this word is very general, but prediction in general
Hmm.
and like prediction and classification. So in uh, in our world, pretty much every client has some sort of lead metric that they would like to get, whether that be more leads, different types of leads, and what that breakdown kind of looks like. And so being able to use as many variables as possible in the machine learning world to make some decisions on, what is the most likely type of lead and how many leads will that generate into the future. And maybe shaving down some of that noise that can be developed when we have so much data in this world, so much marketing data from every different source. These models, these machine learning models, I can just see in the future being able to shave down that noise, make some potentially more accurate decisions on how many leads we think we can get and what that predicted ROI outcome potentially will be, which is obviously a huge metric that people want to keep track on in the marketing world.
Cool. And I don't mean to put you in the spot here, but any successes on any of those experiments? Because again, I know that you guys are experimenting. You guys are tackling specific problems that clients have. Anything that pops up that you say this thing that we did or that we found out was pretty cool and it's worth mentioning.
Yeah, I definitely have one. And again, all of these experiments are going to go in iterations. So, as far as the iteration for the latter example that I just gave, for just being able to maybe look into the future a little bit on what some leads might look like.
Mhm.
Naturally, when we kind of saw that example, we saw that it kind of most follows maybe a time series model, which would be more on the classical side. Again, on my background, I know what we can do with this data. I know what a time series model looks like. And what we are challenging ourselves to be able to do is take that even one step further. So again, using a time series foundation, but utilizing more of those variables, more different types of data. Classification again on the aspect of which types of leads are more likely to be driven than others, and what does that look like for prediction in the future. And so, as far as the success goes, we've definitely pulled out a first iteration, again, from a pretty more on the classical side of a time series model, but it's definitely shown the value on what the possibilities are. And again, that's kind of how we're building this team is these small steps. What are the possibilities? How can we get people to kind of see what machine learning and AI, which can sometimes feel like a black box, right?
Yeah.
to what can those really do as we look towards the future.
And Anna, going deeper on that, because we have actually a couple of clients that are using ML for lead prospecting and like predictions, as you just mentioned. And actually, I just read a couple of days ago a Gartner research that says that companies are starting to look a lot into that specific use case because they're seeing a ton of value. Can you expand a little bit on what's the input data, and is that like leads for B2B companies or B2C companies? Can you give us a little bit more color on that?
Yeah, I can give a little bit. I won't go too much into detail,
Cool.
but I definitely can say from a B2B perspective is definitely how we're looking at, which, as you kind of mentioned, B2B and B2C are obviously going to behave quite a bit differently. So it is from a B2B perspective. And then as far as the different variables that go into play, obviously in the marketing world, we have a lot of different channels. So different channels of where that marketing is happening and how much spend. So
Got
from
it.
an ROI perspective is definitely where we're trying to, optimize and make those decisions. So what channel those different spends are going into, what those different channels are, and how those different channels behave on some different elements, and maybe that be specific segments inside of those different channels, which of course, from a data and analytics team, because we're not the experts, that requires a ton of collaboration between our different departments, which is we have a ton of success with that as well. So that's how those iterations end up happening.
Amazing. So we're starting to have some questions here. So I'm just gonna read the first one, Anna. It's from Melissa, and she asks, for someone interested in expanding their knowledge in data, what do you think is the best way to start learning ML?
Oh, that's a great question. I would definitely say get your hands on any sort of API that you can have access to. And again, I know different program or different developers are versed in different languages. And I had a discussion with someone the other day where they were like, if they say there's not an API, there probably is, which of course maybe that's not always true, but I definitely have seen in kind of just my experience is that, oh, there's an API for that, there's an API for that. And so not only the actual technical aspect of that, but then as you're getting more interested in machine learning, using those experiences to ask more questions. And so ask questions of yourselves, develop a community of people, of like-minded people who are asking similar questions. I kind of have maybe a point at the end of this discussion, but the Slack channels that I have been involved in have been just invaluable to be able to have those types of discussions, and people are asking very similar questions. So not only technically kind of getting your hands wet into finding APIs to get the data, learning more about maybe a specific language that you're already versed in that can do machine learning capabilities, Python, Ruby, C++, any of those are specifically if you're in the stats world. But then how that data actually gets there is more on the API side. And then once you kind of get your feet wet into that, again, having some conversations with people are not afraid to, ask more questions and have those types of conversations on maybe what you could do better or how they did it. Everybody thinks and learns a little bit differently. And those conversations, again, for me, have been extremely invaluable.
And Anna, one question there, because like most of the people here in this discourse are developers, right? So
Okay.
so like they might be proficient in Python or SQL or whatever, but I think personally one of the things that we've seen is that people is kind of like scared or afraid that of having to go deep into understanding how an algorithm works, and what's the input that I have to send to that algorithm, and what's the output, and how do I interpret that. For you, of course, I mean, you are like the mother of of that, because you learn statistics and math. But for a person that has no background on statistics or math, what would the best way to go be in terms of, okay, I want to run a linear regression or a classification algorithm,
Yeah, Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'll go a little bit more in detail, but one thing that I think is just a valuable exercise to go through as you're thinking through questions is even just a question of like, does this make sense? So
Mhm.
I'll just use kind of a very small example of linear regression. Let's say in the advertising world, if I put this much money into my ad platform, I am going to get this many more hits on my website. So again, the reason I bring that up is some of those questions or some of those inputs, let's just say, can come out naturally in discussion or in thinking through those. On that same note, I already kind of mentioned as far as like maybe a Slack community or a Reddit community of trying
Mm.
to see what other people are doing in that. But also, the more and more as the stats in the data world has developed, these open source capabilities of learning stats without learning, or excuse me, learning the inputs and interpretation without maybe learning the nuts and bolts of some of these algorithms has become more and more available. And I've actually kind of just created this uh, resource list of different things like that because I agree with you. The input and the interpretation is really what makes the model uh, understandable,
Yeah.
and therefore being able to do that is really helpful. And besides people, which again for me that has been the most valuable experience. But the more time goes on, there really are a ton of resources that kind of explain those two very very important things without maybe getting into some of the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe your message is more like, hey, just try to picture an objective or a problem that you want to solve and dive deep on that specific algorithm that might solve your problem, and go from there, right? Or am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
Trial and error is also another thing that I believe is in the machine learning world. Of course, these algorithms run so fast now,
Hmm.
and therefore, from a trial and error point of view, run an algorithm, see the results, understand what the inputs that you put into that. Do you have more data available to you? Rerun that algorithm, and kind of just learning in that aspect is also very valuable as well.
Cool. Okay, so we have another question from Endemir, and he asks, how do you handle the communication about predictions with customers?
That
What I'm trying to tell is, if a customer is new to ML, their expectation usually is to have a perfect prediction. Are there any challenges you faced about how to help customers to make decisions based on predictions?
yes, that is a great question, and I think we'll kind of to our earlier conversation on that challenge is not going to go away.
Mm.
And I would say small steps is definitely a good way to take that. In our current success situation, just understanding a simple model. So again, let's take my simple example before is a lot of people do understand if you put in a certain amount of money, you're going to increase your leads by X amount.
Hmm.
That is a bit more on a simple side. As you get more into the machine learning of all these additional variables, feature selection, principal component analysis, the more complex the model, the more complex the interpretation. And so um, I would definitely agree with you that being very transparent and upfront that these are estimates and these are not 100% accurate is definitely to be transparent about that upfront. Another thing that is something we've done some research on is how do we communicate uh, throughout the iterations on how accuracy of a model has either changed, improved, kind of finding those different metrics, understanding those metrics. So again, another thing that clients typically are is more understandable is if you look back 2 months, we said there was going to be this much, and the model said there was going to be this much. Now, of course, that is kind of simplifying a lot of those other accuracy measures that go into machine learning models, but kind of taking it one step at a time and building that relationship, building that trust with transparency from the very beginning.
Great. Again, if anybody has more questions, you can post them in the AMA discussion channel, and I can go ahead and ask Anna some of those great questions. Anna, I actually have, like, now that you're talking about all the things that you guys are doing and all the possibilities, I'm thinking about the stack, right? So you're talking about APIs and you're bringing the data. Uh, in general, like, of course, we don't want to go too deep into what, I mean, your secret sauce, but where are you guys storing that data? Is there a data tool that you're using? Are you doing everything locally? Are you doing everything on the cloud? Can you give us some color on that?
Yeah, and I will say, from a simple answer, we are doing everything locally, and a big success point in our stack, as I guess you can call it in our case, is digital marketing data often comes from several uh, very common locations. So Google, Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, there's like, 5, 6 main sources. And we did find a tool that was very, very successful and fast at pulling all of that information all into one spot. Funnel is the tool set that we have chosen. And that, again, there's many different tools that individuals can choose, but using that as a ingestion,
Mm-hmm.
or getting the data all in one place has been very successful for us. As far as running the more advanced analytics, because R is the tool set of choice for the individuals that are on our team that have learned more of the advanced analytics, we do run that locally once we have the data available to us in Funnel. That type of thing is always being evaluated at any company, and ours is definitely no exception to that.
And Anna, in terms of like putting ML into production, right? Like when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to, okay, the client said, okay, that sounds good. Uh, Go ahead, let's try it out. How does that look like? Is it more like, hey guys, here's the file, uploaded into Facebook or Google, or how does that go?
We actually have not gotten to that point yet.
Okay.
So when we do get to that point, we'll definitely cross that bridge. But
Okay.
showing the value is definitely kind of our stage at this point. And I would say, to your point as well, one of the main reasons for that is because they aren't asking for it. And
Yeah.
so we are, building our portfolio of options, use cases to be able to make that happen. And once we kind of get to that point, those types of discussions will end up happening.
Yeah, because
And I'm
for
excited about
yeah,
it.
because for sure that's going to be a challenge, right? Like that, like, I don't know, a client that invests millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and keeping up that data updated and sending it into the funnel and having the output updated, for sure is going to be a nice challenge, that you're going to have there. But
No, I agree with you.
cool.
Yeah, as we continue to have those conversations, and also as the the data world and the in and out of that application goes into place, we'll continue to have more discussions about it as well.
Cool. All right. So Melissa has another question here, and she's asking, "What's an advice to help the company shift their focus to be more data focused and less intuitive?"
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Um, I'll give a couple of just from personal experience from different companies that I've worked for. I'm sure a lot of people on this call, and this will not come to a surprise for everybody, but the discussion around how to build a data-driven culture is just a huge discussion right
Yeah.
now. There's articles, there's suggestions, and everything. I will first make a comment of building excitement around it is definitely something that is very important, and getting buy-in, and how different companies do that is very different. But from a company culture point of view, having everybody on the same page, everybody knows that it's going to be a development and an investment. I heard you say that word as well, and data is
Yeah.
an investment as well
Yeah.
as the different tools and the capabilities that are involved in it. And so kind of building that culture and a plan for that culture is really important. From a client side, or from an analytics department to the client side, I've said this a couple of times as well, but like small steps.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be a home run from the very beginning, and kind of building that roadmap to get to that point has also been very successful for the different experiences that I have had to be able to not only build your analytics teams confidence and capabilities, add skill sets, all of those different parts in there to be able to get to the home run. It just might not happen immediately.
Yeah, actually, I was talking a couple months ago with the VP of ML of a Fortune 500 company, and he was telling me, like, at the beginning we were trying to do like these huge complex models that nobody understood, and then we just pivoted to, hey, let's just focus on simple things, put them into production, make them work, and let's go from there. So yeah, I agree. Like, great advice on that. Anna, just starting to wrap it up here. What in AI gets you excited? Like, any new tech that you are looking at? With your expertise, would love to get any insights on what's on your mind in terms of new tech and what's going on in this data world.
Yeah, I think one of the most exciting things for me in the past 2 years in my learnings has been just this full stack approach that a large majority of companies are starting to take. Not only the large or the full stack approach in terms of technology, but just in terms of a central reporting location and a central location in general for some of these models and algorithms to be able to be successful and accurate. And so as far as excitement goes, the full stack approach and the easily accessible plugins. So I'm sure for anybody in this call that has looked into these capabilities, the plug and play aspect is so appealing, right? You plug and play, you plug it in, you run your model, and this model sees your data warehouse data and everything like that. It is super appealing. And the different tools that I've again been very lucky to be able to play around with and look into. We've looked into some Newton ML as an ML platform that we've played around a little bit. We've done a demo of Pecan is another very, very advanced ML and AI capability. And then most recently, I've had some visibility into Sigma, which is also a new technology that hooks up in the cloud space and being able to maybe not necessarily in the ML world, but just in the reporting world, this distributed reporting world that a lot of these full stack approaches are taking. They just make it very easy for maybe not only an analytics team, but an entire company to be able to make these super smart decisions on these more advanced reporting techniques. Okay. So a lot of excitement, I guess.
So if I understood well, and just to make sure I got it, what you're excited about is like tools that can easily centralize your data, and where your full capabilities as a statistician and mathematician, you can exploit just by running your models and building your models in one single place. Did I get it right, or?
Absolutely. The only thing I would add is a trust aspect around it. Trusting that data is coming in accurately and efficiently every single time as well, from a statistician point of view.
Oh, that's like a huge, item there. Is there something that you expect there, or is there a company that you see that is doing that well, or like is there something that you say this is like a must-have in a tool that I want to use, that addresses that?
I won't maybe necessarily give one specific, but an all around from a trust point of view.
Yeah.
Any from an ETL's perspective, any extraction that is happening either in batch or real time, whichever approach that you want to take. But these new extraction tools, the ones that I'll mention off the top of my head that I know have been extremely successful from a trust point of view, Stitch, Fivetran. I know Panoply's been used when we did some POCs as well. Those cloud-based ingestion tools from an ETL perspective, I think is a really important part of this stack to get out of some of, and again, depending on what type of company you work at, reporting and doing some model running in spreadsheets is really common these days. And a lot of those times, the data that comes into those spreadsheets are directly from the database. And so what these tools allow you to do is get that out of the spreadsheet mode, get that out of the specifically from the database mode, run it through this extraction piece of it and have it all in one place. And that's what develops trust. It's the same every day. It's the same every time. That model runs the same every single time. And that's what builds trust.
Amazing, Anna. Well, I want to be mindful of your time. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation. Hopefully everybody else did as well. Thank you, Anna. I'm not sure if you want to give everybody like a final message, like any advice for everybody or not.
Yeah. I'll give a couple of last words. I mean, I think the only last couple of things I would say is, again, community has just been a huge part of my journey in the data world. And so, following those Slack chat channels I kind of mentioned, locally optimistic and measure are the two that I primarily follow. And it's just been like, again, invaluable for my journey in the data world as far as the machine learning world as well. So that would kind of be my last word, but just definitely wanted to call out those two incredible communities that I've been very lucky to be a part of.
Awesome, Anna. Well, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. And again, I really appreciate the time you spent with us. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay.